operating system stands out as the critical software running on a computer responsible for overseeing the computer's memory, processors, software, and hardware. It serves as interface that enables communication with the computer without requiring knowledge of its intricate language. Essentially, without an operating system, a computer becomes non-functional and unusable. An operating system is a software that, once initially loaded into the computer by a boot program, oversees the management of all other application programs within the computer. These application programs utilize the operating system by submitting requests for services via a specified application program interface. Furthermore, users have the option to engage directly with the operating system through a user interface, such as a command line interface or a graphical UI. Operating systems are widely regarded as the most crucial software on a computer, responsible for managing a computer memory, processors, as well as software and hardware components. They serve as the primary interface through which users interact with computer hardware. Consequently, operating systems must address increasingly complex security challenges, with common threats including viruses, worms, ransomware, all capable of disrupting systems, stealing data, or causing resource damage. These security issues have diverse impacts. Malware infections can interfere with files, degrade system performance, and even render inoperable. Unauthorized access and data theft undermine trust in the system and disrupt overall functionality. The operating system assumes a central role in overseeing various aspects of a computer's operation, including processes execution, memory management, file system, and device control. Given its pivotal position within a computing environment, the operating system is instrumental in ensuring the efficient and secure functioning of a computer system. Security and protection within an operating system are of utmost importance to safeguard sensitive of data, prevent unauthorized access, and uphold the integrity of system resources. A variety of methods are employed to enhance the security of an operating system. Secondly, we will move to the goals of protection. Firstly, is to ensure programs access according to the system policy. The policy aligns the rules governing how processes interact with the resources of the computer system, encompassing the CPU, memory, software, and the operating system itself. This responsibility falls on both the operating system designer and the application programmer. However, it's important to note that these policies can be modified at any time. Secondly, is to ensure there are no access, virus, or worm. Protection serves as a method to safeguard data and processes against potential harm or intentional infiltrations. This involves the implementation of protection policies, which may self-established, set by management, or individually imposed by programmers. The aim is to ensure the maximum possible protection for programs and their associated data. Now we move to the third point, user authentication. What are user authentication? The user authentication process is employed solely to ascertain the identity of the owner or the individual being identified. Typically, on a personal computer, user authentication is accomplished through the use of a password. When a computer user intends to log into a computer system, the operating system installed on that system typically seeks to verify and determine the identity of the user. The operating system should provide robust authentication and authorization mechanism to control system access. Furthermore, users play a crucial role in maintaining security by safeguarding their credentials, preventing unauthorized access to resources. There are examples of methods for achieving user authentication. Firstly, security key. For security key, this key typically generated by a key generator and often in a form of a physical require user to insert them into a designated slot in the machine to initiate the login process. For username and password, the user is required to input a username and password that are being registered with the operating system. Thirdly, biometric signatures. The user employs a physical attribute scan, such as fingerprint or retina scan, to authenticate and verify their identity. Fourth one is multi-factor authentication. This implies the utilization of multiple identification methods, incorporating elements such as something the user knows, like a password, something they own, like a key or card, or a physical characteristic. In authentication, we have passwords. Passwords consist of sequence of characters encompassing letter, numerals, and special characters employed to authenticate a user's identity and provide access to a system, application, or devices. Users typically create passwords and are expected to keep them confidential to ensure the security of their access credentials. In an easy way, password is that the user is required to input a username and a password that have been registered with the operating system. There are some weaknesses of using password. While password-based authentication system offers certain advantages, they are far from flawless. In addition to the challenges of having to remember, write down, or use a password manager for the numerous sets of credentials that the average person now possesses, there are other disadvantages such as vulnerability. One of the primary risks associated with password-based authentication is the susceptibility of passwords to theft or guessing, especially if they are weak or reused across multiple systems. In the event of a compromised password, attackers could gain unauthorized access to users' account, potentially exposing sensitive information. In fact, in 2021, approximately 1,800 of data breaches were attributed to compromised passwords, even affecting major identities like Meta, where 1 million Facebook credentials were stolen. For second weakness is predictability. People tend to choose weak passwords, with estimates suggesting that nearly 60% use easily guessable combinations, like their own names or birthday. Moreover, approximately only a third of users avoid reusing passwords across different platforms. Exploiting this human predictability, credential stuffing, and brute force attacks capitalize on the likelihood of guessing or stealing other credentials. Thirdly, fallibility. The fallibility of password-based authentication is evident in people forgetting passwords, with store credential crashing, and physical copies of information being susceptible to loss or theft. Although users can typically reset their passwords through email, a compromise or closure to their primary email could result in permanent loss of access to their account. Next, complexity. While password-based authentication is straightforward, complexity arises when users are mandated to create intricate passwords with specific requirements, such as minimum length, special characters, and numbers. This complexity may frustrate users, leading to a higher likelihood of abandonment and lost conversion. Additionally, password resets processes contribute to the workload of help desk team, diverting their efforts from other business critical goals. Next, aren't user-friendly. password. In an effort to exchange password security, consumers are often encouraged to create more complex passwords, incorporating a mix of numbers, uppercase letter, lowercase letter, and special characters. However, this complexity comes at the cost of memorability. When users find it challenging to remember intricate passwords, they might resort to writing them down or utilizing the same password across multiple websites. This dilemma highlights the trade-off between creating strong, hard-to-crack passwords and the practicality of managing and remembering them. Lastly, it can be cracked. Passwords are inherently vulnerable and susceptible to being cracked by hackers or individuals in close proximity. Factors contributing to the increased risk of password compromise include the adoption of weak passwords and the sharing of login details among friends and family members. Some individuals resort to writing down their passwords or using the same passwords across multiple accounts, driven by sheer volumes of accounts that necessitate password authentication. Now we move to tokens. Access token plays a crucial role in token-based authentication, enabling an application to access an application programming interface, that are API, securely. The process involves the application receiving an access token upon successful user authentication and authorization. This token is then utilized as a credential while making calls to the designated API. By presenting the access token, the API is informed that the token bearer has been granted permission to access the API and execute specific action delineated by authorized scope. Moreover, if your application supports user logins through an identity provider, that are IDP, like Facebook, the IDP issues its own access token. In this scenario, the application can leverage the IDP access token to interact with the IDP's API. For instance, when a user authenticates using Facebook, the access token issued by Facebook can be employed to make calls to the Facebook Graph API. This access token, controlled by the IDP, may be issued in various formats based on the IDP's specifications. Tokens have several types. There are: first, disconnected token. A disconnected token operates without the need for physical connection to a system. Unlike tokens that require devices to be plugged in or cards to be slid on a reader, disconnected tokens do not rely on such physical interaction. An example of a disconnected token is the use of smartphones for multi-factor authentication. In this context, the smartphone serves as a token without the necessity of physically connecting to the system, providing a convenient and efficient means to the essential security. Next is connected token. A connected token is a physical object that establishes a direct connection to the system. This can take the form of a USB device that plugs into a port or a smart card that is inserted or slid into a reader. Unlike disconnected tokens, which operate without a physical connection, connected tokens rely on a direct link to a system for authentication and authorization processes. Examples include USB tokens and smart cards that physically interface with the system to provide secure access. Thirdly, contactless token. A contactless token is a type of token that allows the user to gain access without the need for physical connection or additional manual input. In this context, the physical device establishes a wireless connection to the system for authentication purposes. Common wireless technologies used for contactless token include Bluetooth and NFC, that are near-field communication. With contactless token, users can gain access to systems or devices seamlessly without the requirement of physically connecting a device or providing extra information, enhancing convenience and ease of use. Now, we move to biometric authentication. Biometric authentication is a cybersecurity method that validates a user identity by utilizing their distinct biological characteristics, including fingerprints, voices, retinas, and facial features. In biometric authentication system, this unique biological information is stored and later used to verify the user's identity when they attempt to access their account. This form of authentication is typically considered more secure than traditional methods of multi-factor authentication because it relies on inherent, difficult to replicate biological traits, adding an additional layer of security to the authentication process. Biometric authentication is a security process that depends on the distinctive biological characteristic of individuals to confirm their claimed identity. In this process, biometric authentication systems analyze physical or behavioral traits such as fingerprints, facial features, or behavioral patterns by comparing them to stored, confirmed, and authentic data in a database. Authentication is confirmed when both the presented biometric data and the stored data match. Typically, biometric authentication is applied to control access to various resources, including physical spaces like buildings and rooms, as well as digital devices such as computers and smartphones. Biometric characteristics can be divided into two classes that are physiological and behavioral. For physiological biometrics, they involve the use of physical, structural, and relatively stable attributes of an individual for identification purposes. These characteristics typically remain constant over time. Examples of physiological biometrics include fingerprints, iris patterns, facial contours, vein geometry, and DNA. For behavioral biometrics focus on establishing identity by monitoring the distinctive characteristics of an individual's movement, gestures, and motor skills while performing tasks. This involves capturing and analyzing human movements, such as walking or fingers' interaction with a keyboard. Structural physiological factors, such as the proportional length of limbs or the size and dexterity of hands and fingers, play a crucial role in determining how these movements are executed. In a behavioral biometric system, the system measures how an individual performs a specific action or a set of actions, creating a user profile based on this data. Subsequently, when the user repeats the same action, the system compares the new performance to the user profile to determine if there is a match or if it might be an imposter. The action being analyzed can include routines functions like interacting with a smartphone. Now we move to memory protection meaning. Memory protection is a crucial aspect of computer systems, ensuring that the operating system is shielded from potential interference or unauthorized access by user processes. One common method to implement memory protection is by utilizing a relocation register and a limit register. Here, how it generally works. First, relocation register and limit register. The relocation register holds the value of the smallest physical address in the memory space, while the limit register specifies the range of logical addresses that a process is allowed to access. Second, conditions for address validity. For an address to be considered valid, it must meet certain conditions, such as being less than the value stored in the limit register. Thirdly, memory management unit, that are MMU. The memory management unit is responsible for translating logical addresses into corresponding physical addresses. It dynamically adjusts the logical address based on the value stored in the relocation register. Fourth, address translation process. When a user process generates a logical addresses, the MMU combines this logical address with the value stored in the relocation register. The MMU checks if the resulting address falls within the valid range by comparing it with the limit register. If the address is valid, the MMU translates the logical address to the corresponding physical address. Now, what are the reasons memory protection needed? Firstly, by employing this mechanism, the operating system ensures that user processes are confined to a specific authorized memory space, preventing them from interfering with critical system areas. This contributes to the overall security and stability of the system. The point highlighted emphasize the benefits of the memory protection in the computer system that are: firstly, improve stability. Memory security measures prevent one program from accessing the memory space allocated to another process. This isolation enhances the stability of the system by preventing unintended interference. Programs that are confined via designated memory areas, reducing the risk of one program adversely affecting the execution of others. Secondly, increase security. Memory protection serves as a crucial component of overall system security. Unauthorized access to memory is actively prevented as the operating system intervenes and terminates any application attempting to access memory areas not explicitly authorized. This functionality plays a pivotal role in safeguarding private information and preventing security breaches. Third, better resource management. Memory protection allows for efficient resource management in a multitasking or multi-user environment. Different processes can run concurrently without impacting each other's memory spaces. This isolation ensures that the execution of one process does not interfere with the stability or performance of the others. This contributes to a more responsive and effective utilization of system resources. Now, we move to buffer overflow. Buffers serve as memory storage regions designed to temporarily hold data during its transfer from one location to another. However, a buffer overflow, also known as buffer overrun, transpires when the amount of data being input exceeds the storage capacity allocated for the memory buffer. Consequently, the program responsible for writing the data to the buffer ends up overwriting adjacent memory allocation. This unintended overflow can have severe consequences, potentially leading to unpredictable behavior, system crashes, or even security vulnerabilities. In the context of cybersecurity, buffer overflows are a common exploitation technique, as attackers can manipulate the overflow to inject malicious code into a system memory. To mitigate this risk, developers implement various preventive measures, such as input validation and boundary checks, to ensure that buffers are not susceptible to overflow. What are the security measures? The security measures that are crucial for preventing previous types of attacks, especially those related to buffer overflows, such as: first, address space randomization, that are ASLR. ASLR is a security technique that randomizes the location of data regions within a program address space. By doing so, it adds a layer of unpredictability to memory layouts. making it challenging for attackers to exploit vulnerability. In the context of buffer overflow attacks, where knowledge of the location of executable code is critical, ASLR significantly enhances security by making it virtually impossible for attackers to determine the exact memory addresses. Secondly, data execution prevention, DEP. DEP is a security feature that designates certain areas of memory as either non-executable or executable. This prevents attackers from running code in regions of memory intended for data storage. In the case of buffer overflow attacks, DEP helps blocks attempts to execute malicious code injected into data buffers. Thirdly, structured exception handler override protection, that are SEHOP. What are SEHOP? SEHOP are a security mechanism designed to stop attacks that exploit vulnerability instructions which manage hardware and software inception. In a stack-based buffer overflow attack, an attacker may attempt to override an exception registration record stored on a thread stack to gain control. SEHOP helps prevent such exploitation technique by detecting and blocking attempts to override structures. These security measures collectively contribute to enhancing the resilience of system against buffer overflow and related attacks, adding layers of defense to protect critical components of the system memory and execution's control flow. Now we move to kernel patch protection. Kernel patch protection, that are KPP, also known as safeguard, is a technology integrated into the x64-based Windows operating systems. Its primary purpose is to enhance the security and integrity of the Windows kernel by preventing unauthorized modifications, commonly referred to as kernel patching. Kernel patching involves altering the code or critical structures within the Windows kernel, which can be a method used by malware or unauthorized software to compromise the systems. Key points about kernel patch protection are: firstly, protection mechanism. KPP employs mechanism to safeguard the Windows kernel from being tampered with by unknown or unauthorized software. It monitors critical structures and code in the kernel to ensure they remain in their intended unmodified state. Secondly, preventing kernel tampering. The goal of KPP is to prevent kernel-level exploits, rootkits, and other types of malicious activities that involve modifying or patching the kernel. By resisting unauthorized changes, KPP contributes to the overall security and stability of the operating systems. Third, implementation on x64-based Windows. KPP is specifically designed for x64-based versions of Windows. Its implementation on these systems aims to provide a higher level of protections given the prevalence of 64-bit architectures in modern computing environments. Fourth, improving system reliability and performance. By protecting the integrity of the Windows kernel, KPP contributes to the overall reliability, performance, and resiliency of the operating system. Ensuring that the kernel remains unaltered maintains the stability and security of the entire system. In summary, kernel patch protection is a critical security feature in Windows operating system that aims to prevent unauthorized modifications to the kernel, enhancing the overall security and performance of the operating system. Lastly, for the conclusion, In conclusion, the operating system serves as a crucial component of computer functionality, overseeing memory, processors, and hardware. Operating system security is imperative in addressing threats like viruses and ensuring efficient system operation. Various security measures, from data backup to encryptions, are employed to safeguard against unauthorized access and potential harm. User authentication methods, including passwords, tokens, and biometrics, play a pivotal role in verifying user identity. While passwords have vulnerabilities, strong and complex ones are essential for robust security. Memory protection techniques, such as relocation registers and limit registers, enhance stability and resource management. Buffer overflow protection mechanism, including address space randomization, ASLR, data execution preventions, DEP, and structured exception handler override protection, SEHOP, bolster system security. DEP specifically prevents the execution of code in non-executable memory areas, reducing the risk of malicious attacks. Additionally, kernel patch protection, that are KPP, safeguards the Windows kernel from unauthorized modification in x64-based systems, contributing to overall system reliability and security. Collectively, these measures ensure a secure operating environment, addressing a spectrum of threats and vulnerabilities for optional system performance and integrity. That's all from me. Thank you.